In this video, I want to talk about the contraindications and the concerns that we would have for your clients. If you're going to bring in clients and do this as a living, or whether you're just working on somebody that's a family or a friend. So there's a lot less contraindications that we would have for a more physical version, like our vibrational fascia release technique is very much hands on the body. Tuning forks are on the body, and there are some physical parts that we have to be concerned with, some physical things and contraindications. When it comes to VCT, the fact that we're using tuning forks off the body and we're not actually physically manipulating certain parts of the body, there's a lot less contraindications involved. There's probably a lot more concerns than contraindications. The biggest thing is our sessions are designed for you to lay on your back for the entire session. And we want the person to be laid out and not bent as much as possible. Because if you've been following along with the fact that timing and things that are happening within your body, when you're dealing with the timing involved in getting some sort of sensation from your foot all the way up through your spinal cord into your brain, that when you start to fold yourself, if you are full of fluids that aren't supposed to be there, if you are not in good physical condition, bending yourself is one of the worst things that can happen to your body, because not only is the timing off, but you have this fluid that's building up, and they're in small spaces. They're confined to spaces, so pressure builds up anytime you bend yourself. And when pressure builds up in your fluid-filled edema, localized edema spaces, then timing changes. And if timing changes with feedback loops and information sent out to your body for motor control, as that timing changes, if you're remapping somebody to timing that shouldn't be there in a natural sense, you're mapping them to the wrong thing. So we want the body to be completely laid out flat. We want the person relaxed as well. Some of these things that happen with our full body calibration is that through this process called lateral inhibition, the Pacinian sensors that are in our body, as we start to move the tuning fork along the person's body, and let's say this, we're moving it up along the arm like this. The Pacinian sensors that are just underneath the skin, since they're rapidly adapting and you get the same frequency, since I held it right over the skin, there may be two of those sensors that fire exactly at the same time and move their way up to my vertebrae. And when that decision has to happen at the vertebrae, it actually does what's called lateral inhibition. So I have two sensors exactly at the same time, sending the same frequency. The brain doesn't need both of those. It just needs, and if there's several of those sensors involved, the brain needs to know, are those separate space-wise? I need to know what is the individual firing of both of those, and how can I tell the difference between, was that the same firing or was that a different one? So through lateral inhibition, what happens is when two sensors showing the same information comes up to the same gatekeeper, one of those sensors is going to be inhibited. And it's done so by the release of these chemicals, so that this particular sensor right here, when it comes up to that gate, the next time it continues firing, the brain actually ignores it. Not only does the brain ignore it, but there's a physical chemical that's released to inhibit the reception of and the sending of that one sensor. So as we start to move tuning forks across the body in this manner, we are actually starting to inhibit, or to have the body physically ignore half the sensors in any given region. Because we're using a tuning fork with the same exact frequency and slowly sweeping it across the surface, the brain or the body has no choice but to act that way. It's not even up to the brain yet. It's up to the gatekeeper in each of the processes as it makes its way up to the brain. This happens right at your vertebrae, where those sensors come up to their end, and a decision has to be made to get it past the next gate and send it up your spinal cord. So you have an inhibitory process. If it was pain, we would call it an analgesic process, where you're starting to ignore the pain, or the pain signal is not even sent the rest of the way up. So one of those two Pacinian sensors is no longer being considered by your brain, because it never makes it up to the brain. We are starting to inhibit your sensors from being considered, and what that does is it starts to quiet down the chaos that happens with constantly being bombarded by all this vibration and information. What happens to our clients when they're laying like that, and we do the full body calibration, is you'll start to feel like you'll start to no longer feel sensations starting from your feet, because we spend more time with that, and it takes a little bit of time for that to happen. As you start to sweep the tuning fork over the entire body in this manner, you start to actually feel a lot less sensations, where by the end of a session, after using multiple forks and doing the same thing, you start to now reduce the remaining Pacinian sensors. You start to reduce those by half as well, to eventually you get to a sensation, or to a point in your body where you stop considering different things. You shut down, or I wouldn't say shut down, because things are still happening, but you're shutting down parts of your sensory system to the point that you can focus, you can control the focus on other things. That's why you don't want the person to be in pain when they're in a VCT session, because what's going to happen is, as soon as you start to shut down the rest of the processing and quiet it down, the first thing that's going to happen is, if they're in pain in another location in their body, the intensity is going to raise, because the body now has the ability to focus on it. And not only that, but your brain now has the ability to control the focus. You are controlling the focus in a conscious manner, so that the loudest voice in your body is that pain. And that can be a problem. So we want to get them out of pain. We want to make sure they're out of pain. We want to make sure that they're out of pain enough to be able to lay on the bed in a comfortable manner. If they have back problems, if they have the problems actually flattening out, that could go along with other reasons why maybe they can't get up on the bed. They're chair bound. So pain and mobility to be able to actually lay flat for the entire session. We have sometimes where clients have to move because the pain is so unbearable in their lower back or something, or maybe a restless leg or something like that from laying down. So pain and mobility is as long as they can lay flat and I have to move and they're not in pain. Inability to disengage. Well, wait a minute, I thought that's what we're doing with VCT. What this really means is the inability to disengage because of some other thing, meaning I'm in pain so much that as you're doing the VCT session, I won't be able to disengage from the pain because it's actually increasing in what appears to me to be intensity because everything else is being quieted down. The ability, so paralysis, breathing, obesity, those might be difficult things on getting up on the bed and maintaining a position for long periods of time. A person with COPD might have an inability, or respiratory problems might have the inability to lay flat, or someone with obesity that has very difficult time laying flat because there is a lot of weight distribution that happens when we lay down. And a lot of that, by the way, is not fat cells. A lot of that is fluid. And it's the same sort of fluid problem and restrictions that are going to happen with anybody that's in an edema-like state. That the weight laying on the back would end up forcing some of the other things to not work right. Breathing issues come to mind, and the uncomfortableness and the pain involved in having weight distributions change when you change the way that you're lying down. Sometimes it's very difficult to get a person with excessive fluid in their body, like will be considered obesity. It's very difficult to get a person and work on them when they're lying down in bed, on their back, more specifically. Pregnancy would absolutely be a contraindication. That would be at any stage, and it doesn't matter where the processing or the gestation period. The baby is processing things, and you don't want to sure that vibration and that sound is coming in when the baby is very sensitive. But the baby is building its own processing and its own mapping as the gestation period goes along, and you don't want to interfere. There's no way to just focus on certain parts of the body for mapping purposes. But I would say definitely after pregnancy, this would be a very good way to readjust and recalibrate after pregnancy, that we may be hopefully be able to resolve a lot of the issues that are postpartum, post-pregnancy. We feel that the chemical release problems, that too much chemicals, too little chemicals, those sorts of things are a further down the chain of actions that's involved. We're kind of going way up here and actually trying to change the timing of things. Is it a physical problem, or is it a timing problem, or is it both? So we would obviously work with both of those. So no pregnancy, working on someone pregnant at any stage of the pregnancy. We're not concerned on working on anybody with that's breastfeeding. We don't believe that there's anything that the body is doing that would be a problem for a breastfeeding mother. Driving analogy I have listed on the screen. What that analogy means is sometimes we get a little bit overly concerned over the vibration that's reaching our body. If you think about the decibel level of this tuning fork, by the time it strikes the body, it is a lot less vibration that's touching the body and that's hitting your body surface than if you're riding in a car. And in fact, when you're riding in a car, the vibrations that are coming through the wheels into the seat, and of course the vibrations from the motor and everything else that's moving in that car, all those whole body vibrations are all coming up to the seat and through your feet, through your chair, or through your seat, through your arms. All that stuff is reaching your body, and I guarantee you it's a higher decibel, more intense, and you have vibration acting upon you all throughout the day. That these tuning forks are not nearly as intrusive to your body as what you'll get during a normal day, especially just on getting up and sitting inside of a car and riding in a car. So we have to consider those things, that you're not doing that much damage. Even holding the tuning fork up near your ear, there are some people, especially if they're autistic or have sensory hypersensitivity, or like me, if I have a lot of fluid behind my ears, then the sensitivity to that tuning fork being near the ears or this close to the ear, as opposed to having it out here, those are factors to consider when working near the ears. But as far as believing that we don't believe that the vibration from the tuning fork is going to do something that would be a problem or concern or contraindication. We want to make sure that VCT is not used in a sitting position for the very reason that I pointed out. The full body calibration or the brain calibration. We want to make sure that everything is flat and it's straight and there's no compression, because again, it's a timing issue. We want to make sure that everything is that you're not only relaxed as a client, or your client's relaxed, they're able to control their focus, and they're able to control the mapping, and you're reducing the strain and the compression on your nervous system as we go through these remapping and calibration processes. And the ability to self-calibrate. That's a question that we get asked often. Can I do this to myself? Well, it's very difficult for you to take that tuning fork and do a full body calibration. And I know that there are some times where we see that, someone's hitting tuning forks and they're putting putting it near their ears. That's just a small part of what we do in VCT. The main part of it has to do with the entire body and calibrating and remapping entire sections of the body. In fact, the entire body. And in order to do that, it'd be very difficult for you to do that to yourself and to relax, because a part of that is controlling your focus. There's a focus aspect to this. So you not only have to have yourself in a bed position, you can't do this sitting up. You can go through the actions of some of those things, but I can tell you that we've gone over these protocols, and through the research and the things that we understand about the body, you really need to be in a flat position, and you need to be able to, as a receiver of this, you need to be able to control your focus, and in some aspects we call it zoning out. You need to be able to do those things, because there's processes that happen once you start to shut these systems down. You start to recalibrate things. You're going to start to notice from being a receiver of this that things are actually changing within you. So I wouldn't say that this is you have the capability of self-calibration.